Welcome back to the World Word Traction Network, everyone. And this is Chinese takeout, the Pincer. And I'm going to connect episodes back through my feed because there's going to be a number of episodes related to Donald Trump, Chinese EV automakers, the US auto industry, our neighbors to the north and south, and what I'm anticipating will be one of the most magnificent frauds perpetrated upon the American people in history. I won't equate, the other, I think, arguably the biggest story in our current political life is, of course, the Epstein files, Todd Blanche, the effort to obscure and distract the attention of the American public and take the focus off of Donald Trump, who is the perpetrator in chief, and all of the distractions, the Dr. Anthony Fauci firing squads, and all of the magnificent works of distraction and Vladimir Putin-esque obfuscations that we're going to be deluged with between now and the midterm elections, and then again between 26 and 28. So we're in for a treat, ladies and gentlemen. Buckle up. But this is these several episodes that will be part of a larger piece, a larger argument, if you will, is the way that the relationship between the United States automakers, the United States more broadly, Donald Trump's ravenous appetite for corruption, uh, Mexico, Canada, and and the way that Donald Trump has damaged our own EV industry and uh, and solar, wind, and other throughout his entire lifetime. He's been antagonistic towards anything except big oil, the petrochemical industry, because those are the people that fund him so well, but they aren't able to compete on the level of this corruption that will be arriving sometime after the midterm elections. So, what is a pincer movement for those of you with military experience or just military curious? It's a tactic where two parts of a fighting force envelop their opponent. And, it's all also, there are risks, many risks associated with that particular tactic, not least of which is friendly fire. Because when you surround somebody and you have to fire at them, the people on the other side, on the receiving end, can often be your blue team. So, but these are, military professionals plan these things, not Pistol Pete Hegseth, actual verified military uh, students of the game, not yours truly. But more importantly, Pete Hegseth, he has to be a sacrificial lamb before the election, before the midterms. He would be the most, he and RFK Jr. would be the most interesting chess pieces because people are understandably passionate about their disdain, their dislike for these two human beings, witnessing the damage that they're doing to our country every single day. In both examples, and with Elon Musk and Trump himself, lives being lost for political purposes, lives being lost to perpetuate a culture war, a religious fever dream. And of course, I'm not leaving Stephen Miller out of that because he's one of the key proponents. But the pincer movement, what as this plan unfolds, one thing that we can track in real time is the success that China is having strategically introducing EVs into North America and into the United States too, as part of North America. But their greatest success has been in Mexico, and that is, I think, the unit count of total Chinese EVs on the ground in Mexico is up to, I think it's about 116,000 units, give or take. The number's more modest at this particular moment in Canada, but it's really, I mean, it's geographically driven, but isn't it delightful that we visit our friends to the north and to the south quite frequently? And if we're traveling on vacation, and where I'm renting a car in Montreal to drive on to Ottawa, to wherever the fuck. It's a big country. There's a lot of room up there. I'm going from Newfoundland to, yeah, and I was like, wow. I mean, I'm not driving any vehicles, and these are not autonomous, as far as I know at this point. But to be traveling in a car and you're like, geez, look at this thing. Look at all the bells and whistles on. Why don't we have this BYD available in the United States and just replicate that? We can't, I can't fly to Montreal, buy a car, and then just bring it back in and plug it in Boston and use it. There are some rules, there are tariffs, there is, has a car passed EPA muster? Has it been deemed safe to operate in the United States? Now, you reasonably argue that the Trump administration, just as far as the guardrails on any fucking thing that involves him making a few extra bucks, guardrails don't really have any meaning anymore. That's one of the 900,000 things that we're going to have to fix once we get him the fuck out. But in this case, U.S. citizens, U.S. residents, are being introduced in Cancun and Guadalajara, and in Montreal, Ottawa, and in Vancouver. Uh, uh, Thoughts with our brothers and sisters in Canada that are still suffering from really tremendously damaging wildfires, and some of the images coming back from Vancouver from this past weekend are, even on a video feed, are they make you sense the horror that these poor people must be feeling. And this is not Donald Trump's fault that the fire started, or at least hasn't been proven as such. But he is the man, if you want to call him that, that refused to send help, as we've always done as neighbors. When particular regions of Canada are being devastated by fire, we would send our teams there, and in the same in reverse. I told the story on an earlier feed where we offered and sent aircraft to move water around and dump it on fires, and in one particular case, we sent aircraft to Northern California, and but logistically they weren't set up to kind of take advantage of, to avail themselves of the benefit of this tool, and they had to turn around and come back. But that was just episodic, and that's not Gavin. That's not anybody's fault. It's just things that happen in war and in natural disasters. There's an urgency now. So we have, whatever, let's call it rounded off at 120,000 units and driving all over Mexico, which is another very large country. It used to be larger still, and before we took part of it for our own. And perhaps that'll be in the discussions for repatriating stolen land. Maybe we'll give some back to Mexico as a peace offering, saying, because the indigenous people that are being abused by the Trump administration could identify as North Americans, as Mexicans, as other indigenous people that were here before we were, and they were treated badly, as many such groups were. Their lands were taken away, and I think it's probably only fair that we ultimately return some of this to these same indigenous people, to the tribes, and as a peace offering. And you know, is the same true going up through Canada? Maybe. We'll talk. That's we have our plate's pretty full, but it's fair, it's equitable. You could say it's inclusive, but it's definitely equitable. And in just the mere idea of anything that begins with reparation is triggering to the MAGA cartel. So it has that added advantage, but we'll leave it aside and not be mean and cynical. So the pincer movement, we are being exposed on our flanks to some of the most magnificent EV technologies that the world has ever seen. The Chinese are doing a wonderful job. I'm not dissing our automakers, but China as a hostage economy of it is run by an autocrat, a real autocrat, not a wannabe, and a totalitarian regime, and the CCP, and all of those things that the Republican Party is screaming in the halls of Congress now about socialists or communists, and they don't understand the meaning of either of those words, but they just recognize that it will scare voters that also don't understand the full meaning of communism or socialism. And that's, our job to describe what that means as far as, you know, uh, providing help to our brothers and sisters, putting reasonable limits on corporations so they can't destroy our environment and other such things. But this is not an EPA sponsored episode. So we look north and we look south and we see these beautiful cars, and they have lights, bells, whistles. They move very well. They're they're extremely efficient. They travel, hundreds and hundreds of miles on a single charge. They all have the same, that kind of universal move. The When your boy Elon was trying to make his rapid charging stations friendly only for Tesla vehicles, and Joe Biden said, "Fuck off." It has to be a standardized system. So virtually all EVs can take advantage of the same, because the system of that infrastructure is key to making the purchase of an EV more appealing to some people that are hesitant. And lawmakers are protecting. I'm not making light of Detroit and the importance of our automotive industry, but they have also been handicapped by Donald J. Trump. They give donations to him, but the prospects for the future of GM, Ford, and other companies are limited by Trump policies. They are not made better by Trump policies, because the future is and will be and remains so, and ain't no other way, is EV. And Trump is giving China a leg up on that, and many, many other things that we've talked about in other episodes. Uh, Two of the most consequential, of course, being wind and solar. But yeah, so here we are. We're seeing the beautiful toys to the north and to the south, and then that other neat little game that's going on. Another company you know, BYD is the Mac Daddy of EV vehicle production in China and worldwide. I think that they put out 6 to 10x as many vehicles as their next biggest competitor. They're a monster. BYD is build your dream. And they're fantastic cars. I will, but Zeekr is a much smaller company, Chinese company. And the way that up until now and up until this plan comes to its glorious conclusion later on in the year, what keeps Chinese vehicles from entering the U.S. market in in large on a larger scale are tariffs and safety standards. And safety standards, it's not suggesting that they are unsafe, but they haven't received the golden ticket from the United States government to operate. Right? So we can control them in that particular way, just as we can control them from crossing the borders without paying an onerous 125% tariff. But that's going to change. The other way that the US market is being introduced to EVs and the wonder of EVs is in the self-driving, the robo-taxi, if you will, part of the program, which is going on in California with Zeekr, right? And this is Waymo's chosen automotive provider from the Chinese market. And what they do to get it really, this is a beautiful little game they have, is that they send them over not fully assembled, right? And so what is it called? Oh, come with it. There's a particular term with an EV for the chassis only portion of the vehicle. It's something like Seeker or something. Not Zeekr, of course, is the company, but there's a word for it, and I'll come up with it eventually. So they send it over, and the thing is that when it's not as, it will ultimately be the tech will be put together by Waymo on the ground in California, but the parts that are subject to the tariffs and the way that it's valued for the purposes of tariffs is that the bits and pieces that come in have a total value of, call it, nine to $10,000. And so even if 125%, do the math. If you're doubling up on the value of the car that's coming in, and you even do it at like a buck and a quarter multiple, right? Then you're paying your tariff is 25 grand, right? Where in other parts of the world, and what the current regime would be if you wanted to bring them in the United States to drive, it would be 125% of a price that probably fluctuates between 35 and $40,000. It would keep some people away from making that purchase, regardless of how much they love the car and the efficiency, and looking at the long-term value and how much you're saving on maintenance, which is the other big seller besides the affordability of operating. So, of these robo taxis, and I think there are 37 to 3,800 of them currently operating in California. Zeekr through Waymo. And the reports are that they're great. I posted a quick clip on my feed a couple days ago where two cars come to an intersection and they're confused about, you know, their autonomous vehicles, and they're programmed to observe traffic rules and regulations and practices and all. And they come and like, who's going to turn first? Who has the right of way? And when a light cycle changes, which they of course can sense that, then they make a decision, and the right decision, and the one that has the actual right of way is allowed to pass and make the turn, and the other vehicle goes on their way. And there were people, pedestrians on the side of the road giving applause to unmanned vehicles, which is kind of fun in a Jetsons way. It's our delight, and also will be our demise in the end because, well, for all the reasons it don't get better from there. Well, we have to find some fun in all of it. So that's another way that people are riding around in these vehicles, and this is not, again, not it's the Zeekr, not the BYD, but still, Chinese Communist Party and the larger program, they're going to send over vehicles that are going to be appealing to the U.S. consumer, and then there's going to be that drumbeat in the background, like, "Hey, why aren't we getting access to these vehicles because they're cheaper?" Your representative from the great state of Michigan will stand up and say, "Yeah, well, that's because they subsidize it, and that means it's unfair competition," which is true to a degree, but we subsidize all sorts of shit, and Donald Trump has turned that particular argument on its head with a tariff program that is not judicious or fair or sensible or logical or productive for anyone except himself, because he has a little kitty of free money at the end of the tariff refund program, because certain companies will choose to not request the refund back. We've talked about this before, and that'll just be sitting, you know, um, uh, ex officio fund money outside of the Treasury that Trump can pillage and use for private projects, finance election interference, and we'll only know the full scope of that once we can get his ass out of the office and we can do a full audit and start stacking some charges. Hopefully, a lot of state charges. Yeah. So this is more another setup piece on the EV. They will all the episodes will be titled or retitled Chinese Takeout, because the other meaning of takeout, of course, other than a delightful entree, is something else entirely. It doesn't have to do with necessarily with 86, but it may have a relationship to that. Yeah. So we're going to be exposed to varying degrees to the delights of the market. And then something's going to happen in the late fall, early winter that will shift the US auto industry, turn it on its head. And there's only one family that's actually going to benefit from that. And many families, including proud members of unions, are going to be in a very bad place. Of course, Donald Trump did not run with the support of the UAW or any other major union. He's trying to destroy unions. But there's one thing that the unions can't control, which is, all of so much can be done by fiat, meaning by executive order. If Trump can, even if it's an illegal tariff, he can announce it and enforce it until the courts tell him to stop doing it, and he might stop. Many of these, even the safety protocols that say that it's a national security threat. You've heard this about Chinese EVs. They can be driving around our streets and sending data back to the motherland. You call China a motherland or a fatherland? I don't know. I'm going to call it a motherland because those are the people that run this show. But they can be absorbing and sending like roving bands of Palantir robots, but working for the other guys, and gathering data about uh, uh, geography, assets, defense initiative, defense facilities in the United States, many things that are discoverable by satellite. But you're also gathering detail on American consumer behavior and other, traveling habits, just tons of data and a lot of incidental data like, oh, you thought you weren't being recorded in the car. And then that information about your business meeting that you're holding while your autonomous car is whisking you to LAX. Surprise, right? Not it's not your conversation. It's all y'all's conversation after that. I think my phone is doing something. No. Okay. So that is just another building block. This was Chinese takeout, and the sub version is the Pincer movement. And we'll have more on, like I said, the other earlier episodes that were related to this subject. I'll go back and edit the top line in the text associated with the video clip to reflect, it'll say Chinese takeout and then some other subtitle subheading. And so if you're interested in all of the ways that Donald Trump is ultimately going to, after disparaging battery tech, EV, and all other forms of green energy, how the ultimate joke is going to be on the American consumer. But shh, it's a secret. So you'll have to wait for the final unveiling by Trump. And my unveiling might be a little bit before that because what's the fun in waiting all that time and being held in suspense. But I'll do a few more setup pieces like this, talking about various markets, what the EU is doing about Chinese EVs. Uh, uh, Breaking news: Germany's not reacting well to the influx of Chinese tech into Europe. And that will be one more reason that the AFD will do particularly well in the upcoming elections, the first and most, not the first, but the next and most consequential of which is happening on September 6th in not in Saxony, but in Saxony. Yeah, that other place. The German state, which is, I'm having a mental, it's Saxony. Oh, Saxony Anhalt. Excuse me. My camera's just shaking because the wind's blowing. Saxony Anhalt, which is September 6th, which the two largest cities in that particular German state are. Older guy's memory doesn't get better with age, even if he doesn't take supplements. Dresden, right? That's the second largest city in Saxony-Anhalt, the German state. With the elections coming up, AfD is going to do frighteningly well in that state, and that's going to sort of set the momentum for the following year. And are they going to be able to peel off some other, as we've talked about before? This ties into EVs in a German market versus China perspective. But Dresden and the other city, that is the actual. There are two cities in that state that are just around 600,000 people, and Dresden is fun. Not from a military history point of view. Dresden was razed to 1 inch from ground level in World War II, but it's also where our good friend Vladimir Putin was stationed as a KGB agent for about 6+ years leading into and through and including the time the Berlin Wall came down. So the reunification and all that. He was there for 1 year following when the wall came down, which was what, 99. And so that has informed his development and his relationship, as I've talked about before. He's fluent German speaker and is very tuned into what's going on in Germany now. It's why he supports AfD. Is that because he is a Nazi sympathizer? I wouldn't say that about Vladimir. He knows that expanding the power of the AfD is the easiest way to sow chaos in the country itself, and he's going to do it, just like he supports Tommy Robinson in the UK and has been supporting Marine Le Pen and her now deceased father, who was the former head of Rally, National Rally, the right wing party that is going to win in the elections when picking up in what is it, April and May of 27 next year. So he is now is Vladimir Putin concerned about Chinese EV production in Germany? That's a secondary issue because it's a big election talking point. It's like, you folks who currently represent us fail to protect our industry on one hand and fail to innovate at a pace, because Germans are very good at building stuff, particularly cars, but you failed to provide government programs that allowed us to keep pace with China in EV development. And now we're going to get our lunch, our bratwurst eaten by Beijing. And so that's going to be part of AfD's message on the inexorable march towards more authoritarian and more Nazis in the mother country, Germany, the birthplace of the Nazi, not the birthplace of Adolf Hitler, because that, of course, is Austria. But same difference in that in that case, because one goldfish swallowed the carp. So thank you, and we'll do more of these. I'll title them and notate, connective tissue. Hope the wind was not too distracting. It's really not. It's supposed to get up to 90 again today, but right now the breeze is delightful. I'm going to try to get uncomfortably close to the camera and disconnect without doing damage. I would ask you to please subscribe, restack, and do all the delightful social media promotional things that we all try to do for each other. As I've said before, if there's some way that I can support you in some way, then give me a note underneath. I am reevaluating. I have a modest number of feeds that I subscribe to. And as I am more and more drawn to legitimate DSA voices, because it's going to be an uncomfortable suppository for the DNC. It is a catharsis that is long overdue. The fact that we had so many embarrassing performances back when I'm not, Joe Biden, God bless him. I don't say that about anybody because I'm not sure which God I'm talking to today. But by all of the positive forces in the universe, Joe Biden, a grateful country acknowledges all of the tremendous, you were a career public servant, not a corrupter in chief like we have now. A perfect man, no, he would say that himself. His son's relationship, the tragic loss of Bo and his first wife and child much earlier. He's shouldered a lot of grief, and as Hunter Biden has been expressing recently, that the cancer stage 4 and spreading bones and beyond. So, a legitimately grateful nation salutes you in your service, and thank you. You're an example that is ever more important today. So may you live in peace and in not too much pain, and enjoy the love of your family. Thank you.